stories from around the corner
and around the country.
You're listening to All the Best.
Proudly supported by the Art Gallery of New South Wales.
You're listening to All the Best from FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Madhura Prakash. Before we get into this week's stories, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm recording from stolen Gadigal land and pay my respect to Gadigal elders past and present, and also recognize that the area where FBI Radio is situated, Redfern, has long been a place of storytelling, strength, resistance, and resilience for First Nations communities. Get ready, everyone, because we're bringing you part 2 of Unintended Consequences, the live storytelling night that we held at Knox Street Bar earlier this year. The stories at this event were so mind-blowing. I am so impressed by the way these creatives from very different disciplines interpreted our theme in such interesting ways, and I'm so excited for more people to be hearing the stories. All of them were accompanied by live music by Matthew Forbes, who did such an incredible job of elevating each story with a gorgeous soundscape. First up, puppeteering duo Highly Strung weave a tale about navigating puberty with the help of a certain fictional young boy.
Chlorine-soaked hair drips down my back. We had the swimming carnival today, and because I came third in backstroke, Mum's gifted me a Milo ice cream and the highest honour in our family, picking the movie we'll rent tonight. I lose myself in the rows of colourful plastic, floating atop a sea of scratchy navy carpet kissed by the fluorescent lights above. The local Video Easy, full of familiar friendly faces calling out to me. Barbie Swan Lake, Woody and Buzz, those little rascals from the Little Rascals. Tonight though, I feel a pull towards the back corner of the store. It's the PG-13 section, which we usually steer clear of because PG-13, that all changed. Last week, I turned 13. The faces in this section are neither familiar nor friendly. They're mysterious, dramatic, live action. I hardly know where to begin. All these faces are so mature. But then, I see him. All golden skin and kissable curls, blue eyes so bright I feel I have to squint if I want to keep looking at them. A smirk that says, "Come on, I dare you." I search for this face's name and find it in the golden lettering haloing his head. Tailing the cover, I'll somehow suck him out of the picture and into this Video Easy next to me. I spin around. Mum is wiping rainbow paddle pop off my little sister's school dress. "This one," I say. "I want this one." I knew from the moment that movie started that my life would never be the same. I'd always known Peter Pan to be that squawking redhead in bright green tights that Disney splashed all over kids' pajamas and sippy cups. But this Peter, well, he has dirty feet and bad manners. Begging for stories and tussling with the lost book. I can see one perfect pink nipple peeking out through his vine vest. But it isn't until the final fight scene, the one where he's held at knife point by Captain Hook, blood dripping into his long eyelashes, a limp hand reaching for Wendy, and his raspy, pain-stricken voice whispers, "To live would be an awfully big adventure," that I have probably the most important thought I've ever had in my entire life. I want Peter Pan to touch me. I snap back into my living room with Mum in my ear, something about bedtimes being past and my little sister being grumpy in the morning. I beg for 5 possible to sleep because my whole body is hot. Before I was hurried to bed, I managed to sneak the DVD into my PJ bottoms and bring it into my room. I'm lying with it now, still in my pants. I scrunch up my eyes real tight and start to think. I think about how, if I'd been captured by pirates, tied up, gagged, in nothing but my nightie and forced to walk the plank, how would Peter Pan touch me and save my life? Would he use nimble fingers to untie the ropes around my wrist? I feel my heartbeat pick up. Or would he slash through the knots with his knife? Would he slip off my blindfold so I could see his sparkling eyes? Have my thighs ever been this tingly? God, I'd feel his muscles. What am I doing? His soft skin, I can't stop. His pink lips, faster. And when I open my eyes to gasp for air.
Do you want me to take you to Neverland?
Peter, is that really you?
Of course it is.
What are you doing here?
I'm here to make you believe.
In what?
Yourself. Now, let me cover you in pixie dust and show you what it feels like to fly.
And that's how Peter Pan told me to sneak.
One of your mum's Sex and the City DVDs and watch it on the Dell computer when no one's home.
Peter Pan talks to me about Neverland, a place of pleasure seeking and indulgence, yes, but somewhere I can be completely free, uninhibited. I can do what I like and no parent, judgy look or law of gravity is going to tell me otherwise. Most importantly though, he's there when I do, that thing.
Just follow the second star to the right and straight on till morning.
He says if it makes me feel good, I have every right to do it.
Just think.
The grown-ups don't need to know. It's mine. I don't really know how to tell anyone I have a horny Peter Pan living in my head that tells me to touch myself. I guess none of the other girls at school would understand. When I sit in period 3, I hear Julie Genua and Isabel Iacone giggling about handjobs in a vain attempt to get the attention of Matthew Richards. Matthew Richards, by the way, is the boy I saw spit a tune-up peanut butter sandwich into his hat and put it back on his head, while Julie and Isabel are both on the debating team and Dragon Boat at a state level. When Julie loudly says, "Ew, Isabel, why would you said?"
They're so lost. All these boys and girls, blinded by what they're supposed to think. But you know the truth, don't you? All you need is to believe in yourself. Not for anyone else. Only for you.
Meanwhile, Matthew is cross-eyed, trying to stick a pencil up his nose. I breathe deeply as Peter talks to me, sinking deeper into his voice. Ever since him, I feel like I'm soaring. There's an energy inside of me I can't believe I've unlocked. And it's so exciting to own my sensuality like this. I don't dull it for myself home in the sun and tangle myself up in my own sheets. I'm unstoppable. In the dizzying afterglow, I find myself excited to write. I sign up to audition for the school musical. I pull out those bright pink shorts I've always loved but was too nervous to wear. I stand taller and run faster. I laugh louder and speak proudly. I even buy myself a G-string from Victoria's Secret. Peter says,
"This is living, isn't it?"
And I say, yes, it is. But at school, Peter talks to me differently.
Can you see Julie and Isabel don't sit pieces of persuasive writing due tomorrow? The girls who pinch their stomachs in the bathroom mirrors, and the boys who punch any of their friends when you start to cry. Listen to the PE teacher who's reading you a dull slideshow about abstinence, and the English teacher banning Carrie from the syllabus because of the period scene at the start. Oh.
Peter tells me that my teachers are filling my thoughts with false propaganda designed to numb my brain and kill my creativity, thereby forcing me to be nothing but a cog in the machine that is late-stage capitalism. Peter says,
God, doesn't this just make you want to burn everything?
Down on my school laptop and print it out at the library. I do. He tells me to title it
Manifesto!
And I don't really know what that means, but I'm already handing out the sheets I've printed to the popular girls in homeroom. Peter tells me to spray paint.
To live would be an awfully big adventure.
On the side of the demountables, and the students gaze at it at recess. They copy me during lunch. Peter says any other form of writing is misinformation. Peter tells me,
we need to stand united. There is a way for us to live that doesn't involve shame. We can be free.
The crowd. At the end, when my voice is hoarse, some of the Year 10 boys hoist me into the air and cheer. Though the teachers scold me and give me an after-school detention, it feels amazing. It feels like flying. Peter says...
More!
Peter tells me to...
Use the force of the popular girls to round the teachers into the library.
I climb to the top of the school. Peter tells me to...
Douse the library in gasoline!
I'm on the roof now. I can see the whole suburb from here. Peter tells me I...
Can do anything!
I close my eyes. The whole school rumbles beneath me. My legs, I'm thinking about being free. With a great roar, the school building tears itself out from the ground. Dirt and worms and tree roots hang from its base like spilled guts while it hovers in the air. Peter tells me if we follow the second star to the right and straight on till morning, we're all going to Neverland.
And now, a short message from Jeremy Sumter.
Hey Emily, just want to say hello, and also to let you know that if there's anything in this world that you want to do, if you believe in yourself and you take the work and you put it in, you're gonna accomplish anything, okay? And remember, to live would be an awfully big adventure.
That story was performed by Highly Strung, a puppetry performance troupe. Up next, the story of child's play, warped by adult hatred and bigotry.
Being a doctor is not very cool. Mostly people just yell at me, I promise. This is a reading from halfway through a short story called Children Go Straight to Heaven When They Die, a pork abattoir, and one named Lena, whose father is unveiling a new mosque on their property next door. The next week, before the new mosque's opening ceremony, Lena took herself on her best behavior all the way down to the creek dividing her property from Cookie's. She had told the blonde girl they were now both equally banned from seeing one another, so they stayed on opposite banks and wore pining expressions for effect. A butterfly creamed its way through the air between them and landed on a branch sticking out of the shaded creek. All around them, the bush perimeter clicked and whirred. My mum said that we believe in kids going straight to heaven when they die too, Cookie said. I don't get why. Because we're just kids, we don't mean to do anything bad. Even if we killed somebody? Why would anybody want to kill somebody? But you could. You don't get it. In disapproval, Lena plonked herself Taylor style in the dirt. Cookie mirrored her on the opposite bank. Is that why you ate the bacon? Cookie asked. No, that was an accident, the other girl burst, and she torpedoed a rock in Cookie's direction, though it hadn't been Cookie's fault. She hadn't known it was haram to eat pig. Then why did you cry? The muddy blonde persisted. I felt bad. Why would you feel bad if it doesn't even count? Because it's disgusting. Lena shut up and Frog leapt across the raised stones and the dirt out of her fingernails. I hope I'm gonna die, Lena announced, in a ploy to recommandeer attention. But there was some truth to it. She was thinking, on the one hand, of her terrible monstrosities, and on the other of the blistering acne each of Cookie's older brothers had developed at 13. The same age, they had stopped playing with her and started looking at her with a rotten feeling. Now they worked in the pigsty with their hoggish father and flung at her words she knew only enough to loathe. But if Cookie snuck her into the house furtively enough, and if she sprinted past them on her way home, their catapults missed. It was their father who had made them evil. It was age, she'd be spared. Then she thought it was evil to try and wish for a loophole into heaven, and she remembered her father saying God didn't play tricks and loopholes, he was straightforward and kind, and then she was glad all over again that if she died soon, her conniving character wouldn't count and she would get into heaven all the same. I used to catch butterflies at school, Cookie publicized, contemplating the butterfly perched on a branch in the creek. I put them in the sides of my pockets of my backpack with a flower for them to eat, but they always died before the next day, and I didn't know why, and now I think I suffocated them on accident because I didn't know I had to leave the zip a little bit open for them to breathe. I was just worried they'd fly away. But even if I did it on purpose, it doesn't matter. It didn't even count. It doesn't mean you should do it. My mum said its Cookie hopped up and picked a leaf off a nearby banksia to prove a point. Not one to be outdone, Lena manifested the pièce de résistance of the afternoon from her pocket, a magnifying glass. She plucked a leaf of her own and angled the magnifying glass under a beam piercing through the canopy. The leaf began to smoke. Beside her, Cookie refused to breathe. On the verge of apnea, she seized control of the magnifying glass and raced to an anthill by the creek and made Lena watch as ants came marching one by one and fried and died. And then she turned from her goblin crouch to give a slow reptilian grin, which brought Lena nearly to convulsion. The ant hole. And when she saw the green pallor in Cookie's face, she was immensely enthralled. The ants flooded out all at once. They scattered and mounted their tormentors' bodies. In a matter of seconds, both girls were coated head to toe, and what began as a tickled titter turned into a full-throttle scream as they staggered and tripped one another, one after the other, into the creek. They thrashed in the water, which was only about as deep as their knees. Hysteria abated only once their skins had stopped crawling. They opened their eyes to find themselves bug-free and sitting in a slow-moving stream upon the surface of which floated hundreds upon hundreds of drowned little things. They smiled. To do would be worse than this. Unburdened by evil, the girls parted as friends. Lena followed the butterfly all the way home and waddled into the kitchen to avoid the crowd outside, where their very first mosque was set to be imminently unveiled. Mother was in the kitchen hacking through lamb chops in preparation for the celebratory barbecue, and from behind she had the shape of a sanded down cement rectangle. Lena announced herself with a squelch. Mother turned to conduct a disembodied survey. Her eyes rolled like great big pearls from the tip of Lena's head to the magnifying glass, like a smoking gun in her hand and the puddle at her feet. We fell in the creek. We were playing. Lena knew she had been a devil. Her lip turned white. To preempt her penalty, she sobbed through confession. By the end, Mother was a glacier. Now she faced the drain plug of her daughter. Now she stalked towards her, across coals. Now her knuckles were white, gripping the butcher's knife. Now her voice came from some moldy cabin. "Does it feel good?" she asked. "To be cruel when you think it doesn't matter?" Lena shrunk into a maggot between the growing shadow of Mother, who was so silent and so still, who took on a lightless glow that glinted off the knife in her hand. Then came a sound like the sky splitting open. Mother and daughter locked eyes before running out to the front yard, where male relatives were closing in swiftly behind her, their purple cheeks grinning, and they kicked ahead of them a screaming Leviathan pig. Lena and Mother were the first to see the ambush approaching. Lena couldn't understand what was happening or how or why. She looked with panic between her father and the congregation ambling before the newly revealed mosque and the entourage spurring a pig towards them. These men, nervous and dressed up for the occasion, were so embarrassingly unaware of the torpedo of excrement on collision course with their lives. But once Cookie let rip another otherworldly shriek, all the bearded men turned gleaming black eyes towards the Acne boys and the pig in gallop. Lena was in vile rapture. She heard ants she had massacred earlier that day, and how easy it would be for so many men to murder just one little pig, and so to redeem herself. And because she could not stand the sound Mother was making, she flew to intercept the hooved bombing. The pig was rabid with terror when she crashed into its horrible body. Its eyes were intelligent, white, spasming in sockets mashed by augmented obesity. The animal began to trample her, and she wrangled with it to save its life, even as she felt her lungs being stomped and a metallic taste leaching into her mouth. Her mind blazed. She could not see. She heard a million men howling, and the earth shook as so many boots converged in her direction. But they would not reach her in time, not even consequence. Then she heard a ripping. A gush of warmth bathed her body, so that she had to sit up to stop spluttering. An uproar of men filtered through to her ear, and when at last she wiped her eyes, gone was the swine. In its place, Above her, all around her, was Mother, butcher's knife in one hand, and in the other, the lifeless ear of a pig. She lifted the great flab of its body, still surging with blood, and dumped it to the side. And her eyes were like titanium pins. Lena shuddered. She was stuck to Mother, and the blood that joined them was hot and silky as the day she was born. At the threshold of the kitchen, the girls threw a final look at each other. The men were brawling in the front yard, and the father's body was crammed in the writhing knot, his wrinkles taut in a grief so pitiful. Cookie had been pushed to the wayside. Both girls, when they locked eyes, were crying. They were embarrassed. They would die soon. They hoped the animals who could be slaughtered and had no soul at all.
That story was performed by Jumana Abdu. Finally, the story of a classic lesbian road trip in the USA.
Inspiration that was to my small childhood brain. Such stuff as dreams are made of. Falling into the worlds of Disneyland and Lassie, the Waltons, Partridges and Cunninghams. Not to mention witches and genies in very strange domestic relationships. Look, if ever there was. And the queer families, Adams and Munster. It was Fantasyland, all of it. And it seeped into my adulthood when Anne and I flew to LA. We bought the car off a Swiss guy and were about to head east when the call of Disneyland began to take hold. We'd grown up with it Sunday nights, Tinkerbell flashing all over the screen, rays of light beaming out from her wand. I remember we both said something like, "It'll be good, it'll be great," as we stood in 40-degree heat in a 3-hour queue. Tomorrowland, the promise of things to come. We were near the entrance when a large man suddenly stepped into view. He pointed to Anne's hair, pink punk, 80s, shook his head and said that it would detract from the spectacle of their show. We laughed, said, "Ha, that's funny, Bob," thinking the entertainment had already begun. It's a small world, after all. But he didn't smile back, only talked into his two-way, and a security guy came and ushered us away. Each week as you enter this timeless land, one of many worlds will open to you, unless it doesn't. Later on, we met Snow White at a bar in Compton. It was happy hour, and she was drinking Long Island iced teas and taking advantage of the bottom for turning up to work with a suntan. She hated 7 men following her around all the time. And she said in Disneyland, if you came across vomit, you had to radio in a code V, protein spill. Code A, she said, was for dead people's ashes. Wait, say what? By now she ditched the straw in her Long Island iced tea and she took a big swig, said lots of people did it, sprinkled the remains of loved ones off Space Mountain or the Matterhorn. Though the Haunted Mansion was a favourite spot, and easier too for staff to clean up because ashes are slightly pink and they glow in the dark. Snow White then drew her thumb and forefinger across her mouth, zip style, said she'd signed a confidentiality agreement and couldn't afford it, knowing only New York was on the other side of the country. What kind of story is this? The car was a green Plymouth station wagon and it cost us $100. We kept losing bits of it as we drove along. A hubcap here, section of the timber side panelling there. Luckily nothing hit anyone, or at least we don't think it did, we didn't stop. Unregistered and uninsured, we crisscrossed the country collecting parking tickets and experiences in the land of the free. When you wish upon a star, it makes no difference who you are. The Plymouth. We were only 24 hours from Tulsa, only one day away from somewhere when we stopped to rest for the night. 6 the next morning, I opened the front door and out slid a man from under the car. Holy Jesus! Did I say that or just think it? He'd seen us pull up, told us this weren't no place to be parking no car, especially one of them, Brady Bunch situations we had going on. The hood was all knives and guns and gangs and drugs. Nothing but trouble and strung out bad mother... He stopped himself. Undesirables. He'd slept under the chassis, which was not so... We crossed into Canada by mistake, got stopped at the border by police wanting to check over the car. There was no going back and we sweated it out while they searched under the bonnet, ran a cable up the exhaust, told us we should get the spare tyre replaced as soon as we could. "You Australians sure are mavericks," one of them said, flashing his torchlight under the seats. "Oh, like in the comics," his offsider added. "Beware this man if you deal in evil." "That's Mandrake," the first one said. "He's a magician, a whole other thing." They didn't ask to see papers, personal or automotive, and they didn't look in the glove box, which was lucky because it was really good weed. And parked the car, set about finding some kind of work. "Immediate start," said the youth hostel woman, who handed us keys and walked out the door. 2 days later, we remembered the Plymouth and went out to find it on West 23rd, but somehow vanished from the tollway zone. Another 6 weeks, and someone said they'd seen one just like it at the impoundment lot down at the wharves. So we went to have a look, and there it was. No papers needed, just another $100, and we were back on the road. Another pullover by police, this time in Harlem. Me driving, Anne in the passenger seat, Mary in back. Mary was from Brooklyn and she leant forward, said, "Sorry, officer, these girls are from Australia." And they don't turned to Mary like as if he's going to believe that. Our mouths were dry from the nickel and dime bags we'd just inhaled, but we managed a version of nodding and saying, "That's true, officer." He gave a short presentation on the importance of car maintenance. Said he hoped to get there himself one day, Australia, and let us go after we said we'd go straight to the motor shop, which of course we never did. Eventually we gave the Plymouth to a car wreck place. I kept the number plates and brought them home. I'm not sure why. I think somewhere in the pressed metal were remnants of the tall tales, all true from the legendary past. Plus a reminder of that time we went looking for the edges of a television. My Emma had been shot in the leg, and he flinched every time we hit a bump or rounded a corner, or when a new passenger got on at a stop. He was aiming for Cuba because there was no way he was ever going to come up with that kind of cash. And going via Mexico, where he knew an hombre could take a bullet out of a man's leg without asking questions. The effect of television on childhood imaginings took me from west coast to east, top to bottom, my notion of American North bending and shaping across thousands of miles. I never did quite land on the country being one thing or another, or many, or something else entirely, which I'd only ever glimpse and never fully know. An idea of a place can take you to Disneyland and beyond, rough as dreams are made on in our lives, our very little lives.
That story was performed by Ruth Melville. You also heard stories from Jumana Abdu and Hailey Strung, with music throughout by Matthew Forbes. Special thanks to the City of Sydney for supporting our event. You can hear 3 more stories from this live storytelling event on the All the Best podcast. Head to www.allthebestradio.com. All the Best would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we make these stories and pay our respects to elders past and present. All the Best is made at FBI Radio on Gadigal land, in association with SYN and 3RRR on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung lands, and ACCC on Arunde and Warramungu lands. The All the Best editorial producer is Mel Bakewell, and Phoebe Adler-Ryan is our executive producer. Our social media producer is Isabella Lee, and our social media assistant is Seth Emmerich. Patrick McKenzie is our community coordinator, and Janae Madden is our content assistant. Shining Bird composed our theme music, and Annie Hamilton designed the artwork. We're heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network, and we're made possible by the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Community Broadcasting Foundation. You can find our full archive of more than 500 episodes at allthebestradio.com. I'm Madhura Prakash. Thanks for listening.